All right, welcome to the Money Matters program. This is Chris MWOLOLO, and on sign language interpretation is Tobias Omondi. Today's topic, I want us to talk about the challenges faced by persons with disabilities working in office job. This is a topic I thought about after um watching an event that was in USIU during the Deaf Awareness Week. And some of the panelists were urging the deaf people not to fear to apply for jobs. Already, a big percentage may not be employed because of some reasons. And those who are employed are facing some challenges that I want us to discuss in this show. These are stories that are not told. People with disabilities are suffering in silence in the offices. These are experiences that maybe are never shared. But on this show, I would want you to understand. So those who are in the private sectors and you would want to hire people with disabilities, you have to understand some of the challenges that those who are already employed are facing and how to solve them. How do you interact with your employee if he or she is a person with disability? So let's get started. There are many challenges that a person with disabilities has to go through to secure employment. In some cases, you may find that people with disabilities are paid less than their counterparts without disabilities. In other cases, you'll find them being mistreated at their workplaces and looked down upon as people who cannot be relied on simply because of their disability. There are laws against this, but recently there are articles that are calling out bosses who do not encourage valuing individuals with disabilities as human beings with equal opportunities. Now, there are many challenges that disabled people have to live with when employed and even as they seek employment. So the first challenge is employers' doubt. For many business owners, employing a person who has a disability is a sign of poor leadership, since there is considerable skepticism and misconceptions concerning this group. Doubt emanates from the person's inability to recognize the achievements of a person with disability and judging them based on their disability. No matter how much they try, many people with disabilities do not fit in at work when they get employed and given the roles which the boss thinks is the only thing they can handle. Such instances anger people with disabilities, and they may lead to depression and a lowered self-esteem. Doubting someone's capability does not bode well for an employer. They might let go of one of the best employees they would have hired because they doubt their ability. Interestingly, you might find a person with disability carrying out their objectives easily and making their employers considerable profits after being given a chance. The second challenge is lack of education. Uneducated people with or without a disability do not easily find a job unless they work as manual laborers, delivery boys, etc. These tasks are impossible to complete, especially for persons with a walking disability, blindness, or any other disability. The problem with education for people with disabilities is that none of them chose not to be educated. Circumstances sometimes may have forced these people to go their entire lives without education, simply because their parents did not want them to go through the stigma, or they could not comprehend what was being taught. However, many people with disabilities complete their studies and acquire lucrative degrees that see them working in national recognized organizations. Though it is not always as easy as it sounds, because some organizations, they better hire a person without disability, a high school graduate, than a person with disability degree holder. A sad fact, right? But this is what is happening in some organizations, especially those who do not champion for disability inclusion. The third challenge is being trapped in poverty. Sometimes people with disabilities get trapped in poverty because of reasons such as the family has spent their entire fortune on the individual's health and being born poor. Let's say a family has a person with disability. Maybe they sold their land, they sold their property so that they could treat this person. But maybe the condition was worse and it could not be rectified. And in some instances, you find that some of the people with disabilities were neglected by their parents and grow up in care centers. Of course, poverty would hinder the individual, no matter how qualified they are, from reaching the interview grounds and even dressing well for the interview. Also, it is not definite if they will be chosen for the post. Therefore, they just decide to stay at home. Another challenge is stigmatization. Working in office job can be challenging for a person with disability, especially if they don't get along with other employees. People with disabilities often face stigmatization, especially if their disabilities are visible, e.g., inability to walk. Some of the employees are isolated by their peers who fear that disability might be transmitted. And this is high level of ignorance, because disability is not a disease. It cannot be transmitted unless employees engage in a fight. Maybe someone breaks the other person a leg, or maybe something happens and a person gets disabled from that altercation or the fight. But disability cannot be transmitted. Another challenge is the disparity between supply and demand. People with disabilities experience a considerable gap in employment caused by their tendency to quit jobs due to stigmatization and other challenges. The reasons for leaving are quite obvious. Therefore, employers are advised to make the conditions of working suitable. Imagine having to climb stairs with crutches, or locating an office chair in an office that you've never seen. How is that? You know, looking into the needs of people with disabilities reduces the rate at which people commit suicide out of depression. Through poverty and isolation, it has been noted that people with disabilities live very uncertain lives as their employers expect them to carry out their tasks in unconducive environments. Last but not least, transport and accommodation facilities. Many organizations lack the proper amenities for people with disabilities. And of course, this would make it almost impossible for a person with disability to cope with work and other factors. For example, a person using wheelchair requires room for mobility. If they work upstairs, the organization should have something to aid their movement, like an elevator or escalator. Then the last challenge that I would want us to talk about is negative attitudes. Some people are just angry at people with disabilities for no reason. They try to make their lives as complicated as possible as they do not wish to continue working together. Such people make people with disabilities feel like they do not belong in the organization, and this demeans their self-esteem. Negative stereotypes about people with disabilities have caused many organizations shy away from employing them. And if they do, they are keen and they keep an eye on them in case they mess up. You may find that there's a person with disability in an organization, and the people in that setting are keeping an eye. If anything is destroyed or that person happens to destroy any property belonging to the office, you hear the person is fired. They look for an excuse so that that person could not work there. Additionally, the organization's leaders' attitude towards people with disabilities may cause climatic results that would last their lifetime. As I conclude, this is what I would want to say. I am not complaining, because you may think people with disabilities like complaining. It's not complaining, fighting for our rights, because these are experiences that are never shared. It is good to care for people with disabilities and show them the best ways to make their work as comfortable as possible. Employers and fellow employees need to understand a person with disability and drive the strategic option, not killing their morale, but boosting it. This would change the dynamic of the organization. Hope you've had something there. I was delivering this message to employers, especially the private sector, which are being urged to hire persons with disabilities. You may not know why people with disabilities shy away from applying these jobs. Those are the challenges that they fear. As employers, make sure you try to understand and find solutions for those challenges. That's it for Money Matters. This is Chris Mololo. Tobias Amondi has been my sign language interpreter. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night. and enjoy the rest of your viewing. Goodbye.